I guess what we're kind of groping toward, because I think we can just jump around, because basically I wanted to talk about why is she getting so much hype? Why is she getting so much critical acclaim, so much like respect from like these high caliber artists? But really, I feel like some of that defense of her is actually a response to the backlash to Billie Eilish. And we've been kind of groping toward the backlash. And I guess we should just jump into the, industry plant discussion here, which is like something that people just seem like they always want to talk about when it comes to Billie Eilish. Now, you guys were talking about it feeling genuine. You were talking about Britney Spears. I mean, maybe you could use Britney Spears as an example. How would you define what people want to say an industry plant is?
It's like something. Britney Spears maybe is a harder example. I think of something like NSYNC, Backstreet Boys. Like, that's not a band that, like, a lot of, when you think of a band, you think of like some kids that got together in high school and, they played some bars and then somebody discovered them and then they got a label and whatnot. NSYNC is like somebody, that Lou Pearlman guy was like, I got an idea. I'm gonna make this band of 5 attractive, boys. One will be the bad boy, one will be the sweet guy. And then so he goes out and he auditioned, JT's on the team, whoever else got on. And like that's formulated, like that band didn't exist until a powerful record executive decided it should exist because he saw a market for it and wanted to make millions and millions of dollars, and it worked. That's sort of what I think of when I think of like a legitimate industry plant.
I mean, like Britney Spears too, because it's kind of like, in fact, did you know, Darren? I didn't know this, but and maybe I'm fucking this up, but if I remember correctly, Robin was supposed to be like this hot new pop artist by this whatever this management company is. And she was like being too weird. And so they like, put their hopes from her onto this young girl, Britney Spears, to try to make her into like the next big thing. And so that's kind of like Robin went her own way and, Britney Spears went hers. But it does feel like there were a bunch of label execs and they were like, Britney Spears, let's put her in a schoolgirl outfit.
Yes, and let's tie it up so we can see her midriff just a little bit.
Yeah,
that's what's
that wasn't like an expression of her personality necessarily.
Exactly.
So what would you add to like this industry plant definition, Darren?
Yeah. So, exactly kind of what you guys are saying, like a room full of suits who are trying to basically manufacture big hits. They hire, the best songwriters and the best producers and all of this stuff to literally, and then all they need the person for is for like an image, right? Mm-hmm. And Robin's a good example. I mean, Robin had a pretty big hit in the 90s before she disappeared. And I guess this is kind of the time that you're talking about, Gabe.
Right.
And she completely fell off the radar and came back in like 2010, right? I mean, that was a long time.
Right.
You look at like Sky Ferreira's, whatever. She talks about this like on her album. Like she talks about how like basically record executives telling her to be sexier and to, wear certain clothing and stuff. And she sort of rejects that. And where is she now? I mean, that's that, whatever. Yeah. But like industry plant by definition to me is like, record executives deciding on what they believe is going to be trendy, having like market research, doing all of this, spending all sorts of money to create an image and then placing the right person in that image.
Selling it.
Yeah.
And, so when it comes to Billie Eilish, there's all that stuff. There's also the added qualifier, it seems to be, of an industry plant where you have the only reason you became the face was because you had some kind of connections in the first place, so her parents are, I don't know, they're like actors, like not famous really, but they've had small roles in like popular stuff like The West Wing and I don't know, Baskets and stuff like that. But her brother was on Glee, I guess. Right. And, so she certainly got a leg up, but in your guys' words, why are people calling Billie Eilish an industry plant?
I think what you just said, like having the connections, like seems a little suspicious and stuff. But Anthony Fantano did a like video about Eilish being an industry plant, and I thought he really like explained it well. Like basically anyone that's famous is famous because they have some sort of connection. That's just the way the world works, There's so many. Think of how many people personally that have a band. You know, everybody's had a band at some point in their life, you know, and then how many of those not only like make money but become like hugely famous? Most of the, I mean, like even Fantano even mentions like the Beatles, you know, like the Beatles were sort of like they happened to meet Brian Epstein, and Epstein like sort of molds them into this image, but you know, pushes them a certain way, and then that's why they become, you know, this huge band and everything. So like,
I mean, so there's definitely that, but there's like, it feels a little different because you could say something like, okay, yes, you get a lucky break by like making the right friend or impressing the right person or whatever. But then it feels like, what do you do with that lucky break, right? So like somebody like Nirvana, it doesn't feel like they compromised once they got their
Nirvana's
shots.
a bad example because they are like one of those few that like really did just like make it from nothing.
Well, but I mean, like a lot. There's a lot. You know, there's people like, I mean, there's just like countless artists where it's not like they were totally compromised by, okay, if you want your shot, you got to totally change your image or something like that. Like I feel like there are a lot of artists that were kind of bold and uncompromising. We tend to celebrate those and we acknowledge like, hey, they got a lucky break, but look what they did with it. Whereas there are other people who, you know, it just feels like, you know, mass market appeal or something like really. They get their lucky shot because they're willing to play along, and then otherwise you end up like this Sky, and I can't say her last name either, Darren, so don't feel bad. You know, where you're just totally shut out. But I mean, you know, so basically, what I thought of when I thought of an industry plant, I guess I think that the whole industry plant thing is in some ways bogus, in some ways not bogus. So, in one sense, I can't, you know, people like, because Fantano, he talks about like the Beatles and the Clash and stuff, and people who actually were kind of like groomed, and then of course the Beatles kind of like took it and ran with it in their own direction. But as being an example of an industry plant, I got a much better example of an industry plant, which is like Sean Lennon or like Damian Marley. Yeah. What could be a greater industry plant than that? And yet, have you ever felt like, oh, Sean Lennon shouldn't be allowed to make music?
No, exactly. Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. You know, like. And maybe Sean Lennon is a bad example because he didn't like, you know, who's actually a better example, Julian Lennon, who in the 80s had like a couple sort of minor hits, and they're really trash, and they really do sort of like reek of that, like my dad's John Lennon. You know, we can sell this, whatever. So yeah, Sean Lennon, I think he's like gone his own, like he has like some weird band with Les Claypool now, you know, like he's not exactly like trying to,
but even then, even like Julian, like, I mean, you would like, why not? Why shouldn't he be allowed to make a record if he wants to make a record, you know?
No, but I think like someone like Julian Lennon, like, I don't know if you've ever listened to his record, but I have tried, and, that the record would not have been made if his last name was something different. You know, it's not very good. But yeah, I get what you mean. Like, I mean, why shouldn't he be allowed to? And there's people like the Wallflowers, like that's Bob Dylan's son.
Yeah,
and you know, he doesn't really.
Well, I think of like Kurt Cobain's daughter, Frances Bean.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You know,
like,
even if there's like a minor talk about her creating an album, like there's article after article. And
yeah,
what's
exactly.
really interesting is that those articles, they title it like Kurt Cobain's daughter, not
Frances Bean Cobain. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And I mean,
so I mean, the question is like, let's say that Billie Eilish got a leg up because she has some kind of industry connections, and it certainly is. There's something a little suspicious about the fact that like her breakthrough song is Ocean Eyes, which sounds as professionally produced as her debut album here does. So maybe they're just rich.
Yeah,
like,
I mean,
her brother, you know, but he makes all the music and stuff like that. It's not like they have a team of songwriters like you were mentioning, Darren. But is it, you know, you kind of already touched on it, Darren, but is this like kind of her, or is this a label exec like giving her a leg up and selling us a Billie Eilish that we want to see?
So here's my thoughts. Like, and I've thought about this so much, you know, to answer the question directly, like, do I think Billie Eilish is an industry plant? I would say no, but there is no doubt in my mind that there is not a room full of suits, record executives, right, that are strategizing behind the image of Billie Eilish. Because look at all of the places that she's been. 17 magazine, Ellen, the Ellen show. She's everywhere. Even Pitchfork. I mean, these are, you know, Billie Eilish is not like reaching out directly to these people and trying to get on there. No, there is somebody behind the scenes that is putting her out there, you know, and like, this is what happens when you get on a major label. I mean, look, you mentioned Nirvana as an example of not at all being an industry plant, but, you know, they got they got a lot more airplay on the radio because they signed on to Geffen Records. You know what I mean? They got their videos played on MTV.
And that's why
saw it.
That's why you sign on a major label.
And they didn't compromise their image or their sound, because what they were doing was what people were already, like, they were ready for it. They were relating to it. But somebody has to get it out there. Billie Eilish, she, the way she dresses, her sort of style, her thoughts on like, oh, I'm not, I'm going to wear baggy clothing because I don't want people to judge me and stuff, or, people shouldn't care about it, whatever. That's a sentiment that is shared. I mean, that's a big thing right now. We all know about that, right? And so you take that, you bottle it up, and you find all the right avenues, YouTube, all of these places, so that it can get out there and then people latch onto it.
Yeah, I think that's completely perfect, Aaron. Like that's exactly how I feel. Like, yeah, she's signed to a major label. So yeah, there is a room of suits behind her. Because there's a room of suits behind
money. There's money involved.
There's a room of suits behind any of those people.
What I want to know is, like, I'm fine with that as long as it's genuine. So sometimes, like, it feels a little pandering, when she puts, like, for reasons I really cannot understand, why the clips from The Office are on that one song. It feels a little bit like, all of, like, the young kids today, they binge watch The Office on Netflix. It's like a shared cultural language they have. And so you think, like, okay, there are a couple options here. One, Billie Eilish, like, just loves The Office, and she happens to be a lot like a lot of people in her generation.
She does.
And
she does, apparently.
So she puts it there. Two, that's true or not, but it doesn't matter because she knows that a lot of her listeners will really get a kick out of that, and so she adds it. Three, some suit says, could you put an Office reference on this? Because it gives us, like, we see that our audience really likes that. At the end of the day, is there even a difference between those three things? And would it bother you if it was kind of a Suits decision?
I mean, if it's a Suits decision, then that's a little stupid, but I don't think it is. I mean, like you said, it's sort of a shared cultural language of her age group, like people that age. The Office is their Seinfeld. And when I was 15 making shitty songs, on my computer, I put Star Wars samples in them and stuff because I fucking liked Star Wars, and I thought it would be cool to have a Star Wars sample. But that's why I did it. Just the difference is no one heard mine, and we're hearing hers.
Well, and there's a mixture here, right? Because according to 17.com in the article I read that said 10 reasons why you'll be more obsessed with Billie Eilish. One of those reasons was that she loves The Office, right?
Right.
So she genuinely loves The Office, but who's paying for the rights to be able to put The Office on this major record?
That is something a little weird because it's like a very indie thing to kind of like sample something that you like, on there, on your album, but she must have paid a lot of money, or her label did, to have that. So it's kind of like a funny exposure of like, this feels indie, but it's not really. But it's not just that. I mean, it feels like all of her lyrics they're really kind of like, I don't know, there's a lot of like sad girl shit, a lot of like, kind of clever, witty shit. And it feels just very fitting to be like the caption on an Instagram photo or a Tumblr post, and so then you start to like wonder, is this just how she thinks because she grew up on Instagram? Or is she like consciously thinking, or is somebody consciously asking her to, or her brother, to write lyrics that people will share on Instagram? It goes beyond The Office to just be like, are the lyrics calculated? Is the image calculated? Like, you start to like have doubt about everything almost.
I mean, think about when we were this age. Everybody, you'd take your favorite emo lyric and make it your away message on AIM. This.
And actually, I was thinking about like in our youth, we had LiveJournal, and I felt like a lot of emo bands were specifically writing to be quoted on LiveJournal.
Like the title of a LiveJournal entry. Yeah.
Deliberately, I think they were.
Oh yeah, I mean, so, all those like screamo hardcore bands. Yeah, like all the titles were some long, like rambling LiveJournal title. Yeah, but I mean, that was just like, I don't think that most of those bands weren't on like some major label. I think it was just like that was the culture at the time. The culture now is posting stuff on Instagram, having like a little.
So she's got her like
quote. I mean, because she's
got her finger on the culture, or she's just expressing her true feelings, or
I think it's hard for us to look at it because we're all in our 30s. If we, you are now
just called out,
but
he's not ready yet. Okay, he just
joined the club, but yeah, like maybe it feels calculated to us because we're not doing that. We're not posting our favorite lyrics on Instagram, but we fucking were when we were 17. You know, we all did it on LiveJournal, on MySpace, on AIM.
I know, but do the calculation, like, Darren, do you feel like that's calculated, and would it bother you if it was?
Like, what do I think is calculated? Like,
you know, like she's writing like with the intent of people sharing this on Instagram. You know, like that's, you know.
I mean, like
weird?
I think Phineas, her brother, I think that's kind of part of his role, right? I can imagine, and this is obviously just total speculation, but like, you know, Billie comes up with a song called "Wish You Were Gay." You know, she maybe have just written a little something on the guitar, and right. I think that Phineas sort of formulates that so that it would fit, and maybe it would be something, you know, so that it would work in a way that, yes, it would be like great for an Instagram post or whatever. Like, I just think that is part of it, but I truly believe that most of this is truly genuine, and that song in particular, I think, is where I go to, because like when I first heard it, I was like, well, this is interesting. This sounds like something like how appropriate for her to be singing something like this right now, right? But when you read into it, you know, it turns out, oh, she wrote this song about a guy, and I guess the guy didn't like her back or something like that, and she just wishes that he was just gay. Like, she wishes that was the reason that she that he
so
didn't
it wouldn't
like her,
damage her ego.
But
it kind of changes my perspective on the song, you know.
So where I came down on is like, so yeah, I think it's genuine. I think that, like I mentioned with like Sean Lennon, Julian Lennon, Damian Marley, whatever, like I actually don't care about industry plants. I think a lot of, you know, if depending on how loose your definition of industry plant is, like you mentioned, Dan, a lot of stuff would fall under the umbrella of industry plant, and it just doesn't matter. It just matters what you do with that opportunity. I'm not really like, I don't really care about like how the opportunity came about. And if your music's not good, I think Fantano mentions this, like people are going to forget about you. In fact, you know, but then, so let me get a little bit conspiratorial here. Conspiracy Gabe also has some things to say. So you were mentioning this, Darren, but hype is like the label's job, and hype is bullshit, because, and they've been doing it from the dawn of time. It's not like a new thing. You know, when you see like an old movie poster or something, and it'll say something like, see the movie everyone's talking about.
That's
you know?
bullshit.
And like nobody was talking about it. Nobody was. But part of the strategy is to get you to think that everybody's talking about it. Like, you got to see it.
You don't want to miss out.
Like, they still do this. And I believe, again, Conspiracy Gabe believes that, like, on Reddit, are people paid by
1,000%.
I swear to God. I swear to God. Like, on 4chan, on all this shit. They're on YouTube comments.
They would be literally stupid if they didn't do it. Yeah. You know? It would be stupid not to do it.
You want to create like an organic growth vibe. But yeah, you'd be an idiot not to like try to manipulate that in some way. And so I think we should separate that from Billie Eilish herself. I will agree wholeheartedly that the whole hype machine around her is kind of trying to make her the voice of Generation Z, you know, whatever the fuck they call these kids nowadays. I don't actually know, but
I think that's
it's like, it's trying to make her the voice of her generation. And I think that her music is entirely separate from the way she's being marketed and hyped up. Would you agree with this, Darren?
Yes, I would. And there's a perfect example of this. If you guys have read about it, just recently she had like some sort of fashion line that was like started, and then people on Twitter started blowing up about the fact that the artwork that was on this
I read
shirt
that.
Or whatever was actually copied from a fan art of some anime, whatever. And it got to the point, it got blown up so much that she actually backed away from this collaboration entirely, because the company that was doing this was truly stealing. But that to me, like, that's different than the Billie Eilish on the record, right? Like, she doesn't have complete control, I think, over her image or where she's going at this point, her name at this point. Like, people are this like sort of collaboration. I don't think she had anything to do with it, really.
No, I mean, think about it. Like, you go to Target. I'm sure there's like a Taylor Swift cologne or a perfume or a Rihanna perfume. You think fucking Taylor Swift was like, picking out flower? That's a good smell. You put that in the bottle. Like, no, fucking. She had nothing. It's a little Foley work for you.
Probably not.
She had nothing to do with it. Like, and who cares? Like, there's very few of the, like, Kanye making shoes and clothes and stuff. He's like the only, like, one of the only ones that like is actually doing that.
Yeah, but I mean, even like beyond that stuff, it's like, you know, like that 17 magazine article you talked about, Darren, like her label paid for that.
Yeah,
And they
of
probably,
course, yeah.
you know, they probably basically wrote it for the magazine, you know, and like, you know, I just really believe Conspiracy Gabe believes wholeheartedly that like reviews are sometimes purchased.
1,000%.
Comments on message boards are purchased, like all this shit to make it feel organic. And you've got all these people like that are not real people saying, Billie is the voice of a generation. Billie is the voice of a generation. Yeah. She speaks for Gen Z. And then everybody starts to believe it and starts to repeat it. And I think that that's what the backlash is reacting to. The music, you know, we'll get to this in more detail. You know, it's fine. It's like, there's no reason to actually hate it. But the hype machine around her, I can kind of sympathize with.
That's literally
the label, not
it's
her.
literally happened since the dawn of music.
Yes.
You know, people used to pay radio DJs to play a song. I work in radio, and every like quarter I have to sign a paper saying I won't do that for the government because like people did it for.
But
so
it's bullshit
because
there's just like a different. The internet gives us different versions of payola. Basically.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like it's back.
Well, and you know, I was going to mention just on a smaller scale. I mean, we've received emails, right, about bands we've never heard of.
Oh yeah,
somebody wanting us to review their record. It wasn't the band. It wasn't anybody in the band. It was some person who represents them. And I mean, that's happening at the smallest level of like, what do you think is happening with the millions of dollars that are backing, you know, the image of Billie Eilish?
Yeah, it's weird. And also, you know, a final thought of Conspiracy Gabe is that there is some shady industry plant shit that I think does happen, which is like, I don't know who was first, honestly, but like maybe it was Lil Pump, but like racially ambiguous, basically white guys with like colorful hair and face tattoos. Like there are like 5 of them,
like that,
you know,
Takeshi
like,
6ix9ine.
Yeah, and there's like a bunch of them, and it's like, and that has to be just like a label being like, hey, you know, we're kind of looking for our Lil Pump. We'll sign you if you'll dye your hair and like get a face stupid ass face tattoo, you know, or so, like that has to happen.